Welcome to a web edition of Cuse Countdown. I'm Bailey Lipschultz alongside Seth, Quam, and Brianna Adams. Guys, Syracuse, a big double-digit loss against Pitt. Where does it need to go from here?
You know, I think we got to make sure we don't overreact to that big double-digit loss. You know, watching that game, I felt like Syracuse was really in it for most of the game, and then as the last kind of few minutes, Lee just kind of slipped away, took a few chances, tried to get back in it, didn't work out, and then it kind of spiraled out of control. So just looking at the scoreboard at the end of the game might make you a little bit more discouraged as a Syracuse fan than you need to be. That said, Syracuse does have to turn it around pretty quickly if they want to make it into the tournament.
Well, that's exactly the issue, that in those final 10 minutes, they don't know what to do. They just don't show up. I don't know what the issue is. They just really need to not be under pressure as much. They're used to this. It's almost March. What is going on recently with especially Louisville and the Pitt game? It's been really tough on them.
A tough stretch with those back-to-back losses. Taking a look, though, aside from this double-digit loss against Pitt, Syracuse did lose to Pitt by double digits earlier in the year. Combine that with a tough overtime loss against Clemson and getting absolutely embarrassed by St. John's at MSG. Guys, how important are these 5 games? Because Syracuse is a team that won the Battle for Atlantis, knocked off Duke, but then has these big, ugly losses on its record.
It's definitely discouraging for Syracuse fans and will definitely be considered in their bid to make it into the NCAA tournament. And I think really what it comes down to is you look at this team and how many guys were on this team and playing significant minutes last season. It's basically, in the starting lineup, it's basically Michael Benajay and Tyler Roberson. And, you know, Benajay does all he can, but we've seen Roberson really struggle the last 3 games, and he's never really been a premier scorer for them anyway. So the other guys are just really getting adjusted to playing college basketball, and like you said, come down to the last 10 minutes, they just haven't gotten over that hump, and some of these guys are freshmen as well, which adds to the kind of the unknowing of how to quite play in those last 10 minutes. So we've seen that it's been pretty tough for SU.
Well, the issue with the first 3 games, they were under Hopkins, and coming from the Battle for Atlantis with all this raw talent, seeming like they have it put together, and then having to have a completely different head coach, and then after that, come in again and having Boeheim again, I feel like the new freshmen, Tyler Lydon, Malachi Richardson, they're confused. They don't know what situation is going to work in what game. They don't know how to read these teams because they've been passed back and forth between Hopkins and Boeheim.
You might think that the transition wouldn't be that hard, but with these new players to the team, getting adjusted to whole new life experiences as well, it can be really rattling. And then it's in those last few minutes when you really need that clear, laser-sharp focus, and it just hasn't been there.
Such an interesting team with your backcourt being 2 redshirt graduate students with those freshmen, those sprinkled in. It really has been a roller coaster of a ride for Syracuse this season. That being said, though, this team has a solid resume. What more does it need to do, though? It's got 3 more regular season games, then the ACC tournament, and it's played a pretty tough schedule.
Yeah, I think Syracuse definitely needs to win. I'd say 2 of their last 3 games. They're probably not going to beat UNC, but I think FSU and NC State, as we'll talk about coming up, are winnable games for them. And to really feel good about their chances going into the NCAA tournament, I'd say they want to take care of both those games.
I agree completely about the game decision, who's going to win, who's not going to win. But the thing is that they have to work together. I'm going to keep saying it. They have to work together. They don't mesh well. Give me the Battle for Atlantis team. Where are they? They haven't been here since the beginning. End your season the way you started it. Amazing. In sync. That's the way that Syracuse needs to be.
Seth, you brought up a winnable game, and for most people, it is a must-win game when Syracuse welcomes NC State to the Carrier Dome on Saturday. Seth, what's your X factor in that matchup?
So I'm looking at the big men. I've got Dajuan Coleman as my X factor. We've really seen the last few games, Syracuse big men have been struggling. We've been a lot of talk about Tyler Roberson, Coach Bam kind of calling him out after the last game. And then actually Tyler Lydon had a very good game against Pitt, but that was kind of an aberration that hasn't been happening lately. And so I think Dajuan Coleman needs to get back into form. We saw several weeks ago against Georgia Tech, he really was actually using his body down low, kind of bodying other guys out of the way, had a soft touch around the basket. I think it's those plays that they actually want to be able to rely on him on offense and not have just a big body down there defensively. So Dajuan Coleman, the X factor for me.
And the issue with Dajuan Coleman is you don't see him in the second half as much, and you really need him to be in that second half, which leads into my X factor about the final 10 minutes of the game. I keep saying it, but it's true. Syracuse needs to be there for the final 10 minutes of the game. It makes no sense that these players are getting tired when they've been trained for this their entire careers. They know how to work against another team, but for some reason, that final 10 minutes, as the clock starts running down, they fall apart. And that's what they need to improve on.
Brianna, you bring up Syracuse and its inability to close games. When this one is all said and done, what's your prediction? Does Syracuse end up closing it out?
I think they will close it out. 72-68, though. It's going to be close because of that reason, because they don't know how to close out, especially against a player like Cat Barber, who just charges through people, doesn't care who it is, doesn't care what height they are. He just goes through. Our Syracuse's defenders need to be tough, need to be aggressive, and that's how they will pull out the win.
I agree with you. I think it's going to be close, and I'm also taking SU in this one. Just the sense of urgency has got to be there for this team. I think they'll have that, but I think it's going to be a lot lower scoring than you. 58-54 is my prediction in this one.
Both our analysts taking Syracuse by 4 points when it welcomes NC State to the Carrier Dome on Saturday. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at Citrus TV Sports for updates throughout the game and with what's going on in that matchup. For Seth Quam and Brianna Adams, I'm Bailey Lipschultz. Thank you for watching.